And I have to tell you guys, I've done a lot of interviews, but you guys make me really nervous.
Oh, no, we're all on your side today.
I know.
Former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney walked into the proverbial lion's den when she agreed to appear on The View, a program which has ruthlessly but justifiably criticized her over the years for her deeply conservative policies. And even though Cheney admitted that she was more nervous for that conversation than any interview she ever had, she and the host set aside their legitimate grievances to tackle a much bigger problem: the threat of fascism from the Republican Party. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips from mostly this conversation between Liz Cheney and the hosts of The View, but also a couple of other clips as well from, again, more Trump supporters coming out of the woodwork to either publicly acknowledge that Trump is either a threat to democracy or that they intend to vote for President Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee is in the 2024 election. So all of this has a pretty consistent theme, but I want to start with Liz Cheney. And in particular, I want to start with a clip in which Cheney is asked to address the insane, the just completely unpatriotic anti-American arguments coming from Donald Trump and his attorneys that Trump is entitled to absolute lifetime immunity for any crime he committed while he was in office, including if he murdered his political rivals.
About yesterday, Trump and his lawyers were in the courtroom trying to claim presidential immunity from prosecution in his election interference case. And his lawyers seem to be arguing, I think, that a president can indeed assassinate a political rival and not be prosecuted unless he is impeached and convicted first. You are a well-trained attorney. What are your thoughts about that theory?
Well, it's without basis in the Constitution. I think that it's as you all were talking about, completely indefensible. The notion that somehow the President of the United States could order the assassination of a political opponent. Imagine if a president did that and then stepped down the next day. And so then the argument is, well, you can't impeach him and convict him because he's already out of office, which, by the way, I think is not right. But according to the president's own lawyers, that's the position that they're asking the court to take. And I think there's just simply no way that a president can be immune for crimes that he commits while he's in office. That's not the system that our framers established. This is another level.
So, you know, again, something I feel that's important to remind everybody when we're talking about Liz Cheney, because we talk about her quite a bit on this channel, because to me, she is, she voted with Donald Trump 93% of the time when she was in Congress and he was president. So this is somebody who receives accusations of being a rhino, a Republican in name only, but her credentials strongly indicate otherwise, right? Anyone who says she's a rhino either doesn't know her credentials or they're just lying, right? So when she criticizes her party, to me, it carries more heft to it. But I just want to say, I mean, her ideas about governance are genuinely terrible with respect to policy. But I do think she's a statesperson. I think she's a stateswoman. I think she's a statesman, which makes her, at least here, an ally of convenience and nothing more. But two things that she said there that really stood out to me. Number one, she pointed out, which I mentioned in previous videos, how Trump takes a different position depending on what's convenient at the time. So when he was impeached by Cheney and the House of Representatives after the January 6th insurrection, he'd left office by the time of the Senate trial, and he took the position that, listen, you can't impeach me because I'm a former president. I'm not in office. You can't impeach former officers. And now he's claiming the contrary. Well, if you want to prosecute me, you had to impeach me first. So I like the fact that she pointed out the hypocrisy there. But then with respect to this idea that, again, it's just the notion of absolute immunity that Trump and his attorneys and the Republicans writ large. It seems to me that the Republican Party and America's right wing are thirsty for this, at least a substantial portion of them, to give Trump this sovereign immunity. It is anti-American. It is unpatriotic. It is precisely the opposite of what the founding fathers, those profoundly flawed men that, conservatives tend to worship. It's the exact opposite of what they intended. And what's interesting is, there is a historian, I saw this on Twitter. He said he was taking a break from his hiatus of Twitter to point out that he found some information from the ratification debates in 1788. So this was from the Founding Fathers. And they point out the danger of having an unaccountable chief executive. They're talking about Great Britain, the country they just waged a war against. In Great Britain, the executive authority is vested in a magistrate who holds it by birthright, the king. He has great powers and prerogatives, and it is a constitutional maxim that he can do no wrong. We've experienced that he can do wrong, yet no man can say it to him in his own country, right? Because again, that's the notion. That's why even now they refer to the crown and his majesty's government and the sovereign, because even now on paper in Great Britain, all the Constitution and all authority derives from the king. So the king is above the law. It is unconstitutional to conceive that the king or the queen, whoever's sitting on the throne, can do any wrong. It's mutually exclusive. And they're saying that can't work here in the United States. And again, this is from 1788. No man has an authority to injure another with impunity. No man is better than his fellow citizens, nor can pretend to any superiority over the meanest man in the country. If the president does a single act by which the people are prejudiced, he is punishable himself and no other man merely to screen him. If he commits any misdemeanor in office, he is impeachable, removable from office, and incapacitated to hold any office of honor, trust, or profit. And then if he commits any crime, he is punishable by the laws of the country, and in capital cases may be deprived of his life. That's what the Founding Fathers intended for the chief executive of the United States. Again, whatever you think about the Founding Fathers, they intended that with great power comes great responsibility. And if the president commits crimes, he may be punished by the law. Here's another clip from Liz Cheney with respect to the 2024 election.
I think that the Republican Party itself is clearly so caught up in this cult of personality that it's very hard to imagine that the party can survive. I think increasingly it's clear that once we get through 2024, we're going to have something else, something new. I believe the country has to have a party that's based on conservative principles and values, where we can engage, with the Democrats on substance and on policy.
So again, that sounds great in theory, right? Again, if you're fans of the West Wing, you might find an attractive quality to, I don't know, a good faith conservative party. But I just don't see that from the Republican Party. I don't even know what that would look like, because in my lifetime, I'm 30 years old or 32, that I've not seen a good faith Republican Party. So I think, to whatever extent that conservatives as an ideology, or less liberal or less progressive, like the rightmost element of a progressive flank, might be useful, then hopefully we'll be in a situation where the Democrats represent the conservative party in the United States and we have a more progressive left flank. That would be certainly attractive. And then we have the $1 million question being posed to Liz Cheney by, I think it's Joy Behar, about the 2024 election and how she might vote.
Let me ask you a radical question.
Uh-oh.
Because I know you're a patriotic American and you will vote. If it came down to Biden v. Trump, would you vote for Biden?
I'm not going to endorse anybody today. And I think that, again, we don't know exactly what the choice will be. I would say that I will never vote for Donald Trump, and that there are some conservatives who are trying to make this claim that somehow Biden is a bigger risk than Trump. My view is, I disagree with a lot of Joe Biden's policies.
Yeah.
We can survive bad policies.
He's not crazy.
We cannot survive torching the Constitution.
That's right.
It's not even the same level of...
So why won't she say yes? I don't know. Maybe she thinks it would hurt Biden somehow if she said that she would come out and support him. Maybe she's genuinely torn, but it is encouraging to hear, at the very least, again, such a prominent, lifelong conservative be sane enough to admit that the Republican Party is not one that she can vote for at this point. But it's not just her. It's also former White House, I think he was either press secretary or communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, who I think he certainly served on Trump's campaign, and he served as the White House communications director for like 5 minutes. This is what he has to say on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, just to follow up on that, are you saying that, and maybe I misheard you, that you may be supporting President Biden this time around?
Well, 100%. No, you didn't mishear me. If Donald Trump is the nominee, I'm a patriot first, Jim. I'm a partisan second. This is a battle for the American democracy. This is a battle for freedom. When someone's telling you they're going to flex and be a dictator on day one and go after their adversaries, this is against the 200 plus year experiment of America. This is against what made your country, your family and my family successful in this country. And we have to explain that to the American people, that what he's suggesting, and they may think his policies are going to work and that sort of thing, but you have to keep the system in place. We have to hire an institutionalist in 2024 and preserve and expand the system of the American democracy. Mr. Trump does not want to do that. And so absolutely, if it's Trump versus Biden, I will do everything I can to make sure that the president stays in office.
So again, I think that's absolutely the compelling case if you are a genuine conservative. Now, I'm not a conservative, but if you are conservative and if you've claimed to be conservative and you love the United States, then you should, as Anthony Scaramucci says, put country above party, right? He's a patriot and a partisan second, is what he said. And I think that's the attitude that any genuine conservative should take ahead of the 2024 election. And by that calculus, there's no justification to vote for Donald Trump. I'll also add in here that Mark Esper, Donald Trump's former acting Secretary of Defense, also bluntly described what he thinks Donald Trump is ahead of the 2024 election.
The attack on the Capitol. I'm just curious, Mr. Secretary, do you view Donald Trump as a threat to American democracy?
Well, first of all, good to be with you, Jim. It is a tragic day in our nation's history. And yes, I do regard him as a threat to democracy. Democracy as we know it, our institutions, our political culture, all those things that make America great.
So the list of people who worked for Donald Trump, either in some sort of White House staff capacity, as was the case with Anthony Scaramucci, or worked for his agenda as a member of the party that he led, Liz Cheney, or even a cabinet secretary, which is what Mark Esper was. The list of former Republicans and former Trump officials who say they will not vote for him, or that they will actively vote for the Democratic nominee or President Biden, and then acknowledge that he is a threat to democracy, that list is ever increasing. And so my challenge is, if there's any Trump-curious person or, enlightened centrist who's torn between Biden and Trump, what does it say that so many people who know Trump, who worked for Trump in politics, who worked for Trump in politics loyally and recently, are now saying that this guy is unhinged, they're not going to vote for him, they're going to vote for whoever is running against him, and that he's a threat to democracy? We have never heard anything like that from any other president. Not President Biden, not President Obama, not President Bush, President Clinton, et cetera, and so forth. This is a uniquely Trump phenomenon. And I would love to hear some conservative or centrist try to justify what that means, other than the obvious, which is that Donald Trump is materially unfit for office, and less so than anyone else in the field. Let me know what you think in the comments.